everybody, my name is Niw. When I told my friend I was starting a YouTube channel, she suggested that I try out this mask, and I am so excited to give it a go. I don't actually know a lot about Taeyong or NCT, but I'm really excited to tackle this project. This mask is super cheap. It's called a Guy Fawkes mask. You can find it anywhere online, and as you can see, the original LED situation is from the movie The Purge. That version is unfortunately lacking in rhinestones. So what I want to do is edit the sculpt of this face mask a little bit. This mask was really cheap and easily accessible, but the shape is just not quite right for what I want. First, I'm using a permanent marker to mark out where I want to cut open the mouth a little bit more. We're going for a big, creepy horror movie grin. Cutting into cheap plastic like this with a safety knife is actually really dangerous. It's thin in some places and thicker in others, so sometimes the knife will just glide through like butter, and sometimes you have to like really push at it. So if you try doing this, be super careful. Luckily, I managed to give her a new smile without losing any of my fingers. Before we go any further, we need to mark out where to put the holes so that we can get the LED string lights in later. My ill-advised method of choice was taking a needle and heating it over a small candle and then slowly and carefully melting holes into the plastic. I can't decide if this method is genius or madness, because trying to cut the mask with scissors or a knife in just holes seems like a really dangerous solution, and also would probably make the mask crack. But also melting plastic fumes are probably really terrible for your lungs. I can't say that this is a good method necessarily, at least not for your health. Anyway, we need to make sure the holes are big enough for the LED wires to pass through. I do this by slowly circling the hole with the hot needle. Also, you should be wiping the plastic off the needle between each pass, because otherwise the excess plastic will catch fire. Then we repeat that process for the holes around the eyes. If I was making the Purge mask, I would probably stop here, but because I want something that resembles Taeyong's version, I'm taking some really cheap paper clay to cover up the mask's sculpted facial hair. I'm not actually sure how necessary this step is, considering the whole thing will be covered with rhinestones later. You need to make sure that the holes remain unobstructed so that you can get the LEDs through later. So I'm using an awl to poke through from the front and back. A little bit of acupuncture for our friend. I'm doing the same process to cover up the mustache and the eyebrows. So here I'm wasting a little bit more of my time by smoothing the clay out with water. I mean, this whole thing is going to be covered with rhinestones, so a lot of these steps I think are just not necessary. I'm also neatening up the edges and making some necessary adjustments to that god-awful forehead. Do not be afraid to destroy your masterpiece, because sometimes that's the only true path to beauty. After all that hard work, now it's time to rip her face off. Paper clay sometimes has some issues with drying, and it's also not going to stick to the plastic mask by itself. So I'm peeling it off and letting it dry completely separate from the mask overnight. So while those were drying, I wanted to determine how much LED wire I would need to string this design. So I did a test run using yarn. For this design, I needed about 1.4 meters, but keep in mind that yarn bends a lot easier than wire, so I ended up using 2 1-meter lengths of LED cable. Day 2, and I'm using this super liquidy super glue to stick the beard covers back on. All I was doing was just slopping on a lot of glue and then pressing the clay back onto the mask. Still don't know if these like covers are actually necessary, but I think I could have just bedazzled the whole thing, beard and all, and it might have looked okay, but I also just really didn't want my mask to have like a rhinestone goatee. If you mix together the paper clay with water, you can make a slurry, which is essential in filling in these little gaps, which would have made like these valleys that the rhinestones couldn't really breach. So if you do the paper beard clay cover method, definitely make a slurry, fill in the gap. So I gave the mask 2 coats of pink spray paint and was devastated to discover that she is now completely ugly. I mean, she was never beautiful, I guess, but whew! I feel like every project I work on, I get about halfway through and I'm completely demoralized and upset and can't go on because I hate what I've made. So I decided to push on and rip her forehead off and give her some new brows. Something a little less, high profile and modest. Look, was it the masterpiece I was hoping for? No, not really. But, I guess there's got to be a reason that she's always cast for horror movies, I guess. So it might be a little bit confusing as to why I've painted the mask pink, but the original mask is silver with blue LEDs, and I was kind of hoping I could pull it away from Creepy Valley a little bit by making it pink with green LEDs, but it didn't. It's still really, really creepy. I showed one of my friends over Skype, and she told me she never wanted to be in the same house alone with it. I bought this fancy rhinestoning wand, and so I'm taking one rhinestone at a time and dipping it in super glue and then placing it on the mask. Because you have to be really careful. If you get any super glue on the surface of the gem, it's going to dull it and it'll look less shiny and fun. Here's what that looks like in real time. As you can see, I was here for a very long time. Buckle up, it's montage time. This took so long, but it was so worth it. I love how it came out. I mean, it's still scary and creepy and ugly, but also like weird beautiful. Tip, don't get the expensive Swarovski rhinestoning wand. Just get a cheap bit of wax meant for rhinestoning online. Also, the best method is to smear some glue onto the mask and then slam a bunch of rhinestones in as fast as you can. Lastly, this mask is far too big. Just cut down the sides. Final step of the project is to do the creepy LED face. Here I have the 2 1-meter green LED cables. I have electrical tape. I have this wire that allows 2 LEDs to be powered by the same battery, and of course the battery pack. I bought all this on coupon through a seller that specializes in supplies for DIY neon masks. Sorry, no, DIY neon signs. You can see here I'm carefully cutting off this plastic cap so that the wire can pass through the holes in the mask. I found out the hard way that you have to be very delicate with these cables. If you try and bend them in a direction that they don't want to go into, they will break. I've had to replace the LEDs on this. After I threaded them too roughly, they just refused to turn on. To finish off, I'm wrapping the excess LED cables in electrical tape so that the glow is hidden. Okay, last step for real this time, you need to glue a strap in. Don't use super glue, it won't stay. I recommend using E6000. I also think lining the mask with felt would be a really good idea for comfort, but I want to be able to change the LEDs out later, so I didn't do that. Okay, pals, let's get creepy. So this was the final product. This was a really fun project to work on. Again, thank you to my friend for suggesting this. I wouldn't have really thought to do it without her sending it to me, and I adore this. I love it. It's hanging above my desk like some sort of creepy trophy. I hope you like this installment in the Inspired by series, and again, if you have any like suggestions or ideas for things that we can work on in the future, please let me know. I'm so excited to keep making episodes in this series. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!